Hello and welcome to Reiki Women Podcasts. It's me, Bronwen Logan from Reiki with Bronwen, and with me I have Michaela Daystar from Heartscapes and Carrie Varela from the Reiki Healing Society. So today we're going to be talking about something which has come up recently, and it's confidence. So are you confident? It's a big one to work with. And does it make you feel like, do you feel like you should be confident? Do you feel like like you've got imposter syndrome, or there's all different sorts of things that can happen when we talk about confidence. So let's see what we come up with in this discussion. So, Michaela, are you confident?
I feel like generally speaking, as a person, I tend to feel confident. And I was reflecting on that question, like, yeah, what's my general relationship to confidence? And then what's my relationship to confidence in my Reiki practice? Both, how did I approach it? Did I feel confident when I started practicing Reiki? And then also what is the impact of my practice on my sense of confidence? So I've been sitting with those questions for the last day or so. And so I think that generally I tend to be a fairly confident person. And when I started working with the system of Reiki, I certainly felt nervousness. I felt a wavering in that sense of trust. Because really what confidence is a sense of trust that we can rely on ourselves or on somebody else. Either we have confidence in somebody or something else, we can rely on it, we can trust that. We feel secure enough in that trust that we can kind of relax a little bit into it. Or we feel that way about ourselves. And when I first started practicing Reiki, I definitely wasn't certain whether or not I could trust Reiki, whether or not I could trust myself to remember all of the things I needed to remember, and whether I could feel confident that anything was happening at all. It's a question that often I see Reiki practitioners ask when we're first starting out. How do I know that this is actually even working?
Yeah.
And there's certainly a sense of a lack of trust or a lack of confidence in that question. It's an understandable question. And sometimes it's just a matter of time, working with something and the repetition over time. But one of the things that really, came up for me when I was sitting with this question is the incredible difference in my sense of confidence when my mindset shifted about what Reiki is, from Reiki being more of an externalized practice that we're doing on other people,
Yeah.
versus an internal practice that we're working with ourselves. Because really that sense of confidence in myself and trust in myself is the bedrock on which I can trust anything else, including my practice. And so, yeah, I think that's the first thing that really stood out to me, is the way in which when we practice Reiki from the inside out as a self practice, it naturally has an impact on our sense of confidence, both in terms of inside of our Reiki practice, but just in our lives in general. There's a certain ease and freedom and kind of freeing up of energy that we can experience if we generally move through our life with trust and confidence. That is one of the values, I think, of practicing Reiki, because it definitely works on that sense of having a strong foundation to trust.
Mm.
So that's what came up for me when I first sat with this question, and I'm curious to see what came up for the two of you.
Okay, Carrie, are you confident?
Am I confident? Good question. I mean, I really have to say that I struggle with confidence and have historically struggled with confidence in my life. And kind of one of those hang-ups in my hang-up closet, times where I've been really exuberantly passionate and confident, and other times where I'm like, can spiral down this road of self-criticism and self-judgment. And always finding that sweet spot in between. So I think confidence isn't always natural to me, although I can get there. Like I can really go there and work with a sense of confidence. And I can really feel the difference in my sense of self-esteem and self-worth when the confidence is there and when it's not, and I think it's always a really interesting inquiry, if you don't feel like it's there. Usually there's some change has happened in our lives that have kind of redistributed our own sense of self-trust. So I'm thinking back of like after college, I was just graduated college, finished my undergraduate degree, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And finally, I eventually found a job, which was great. And it was that job that gave me this really big sense of self-confidence and self-worth, the paycheck I was earning, a lot about it, and the skill sets that I was learning in that job. And then that I worked that job for about 7 years. And then, I changed career paths and I went down a totally different career path. And I realized like once that job was gone and paychecks weren't coming, like how much that job had really filled this role of self-esteem and, um, you know, yeah, that sense of confidence. Like I know where I'm going in life. I'm aiming my ship into the right direction. And so many years I struggled with not feeling that sense of confidence. And it didn't help that I was kind of a novice Reiki practitioner and yoga teacher. And so I kind of grasped for confidence in a lot of different areas of my life. And, the benefit, I think, of that time in my life is that I learned not to place my sense of self worth and confidence in my job, my bank account. And I certainly felt that same like little shift happen when I left relationships, things like that. And so it has always taught me to come back, within myself to find that sense of self-worth and self-confidence. So, um, definitely a little journey for me there, but I guess one other thing I could say about that so that's my own relationship with confidence, but I've also, if we frame that inside of Reiki, I think we can also think of confidence as being a Genki, which is like a good key or a healthy key in our life force energy. And, Bioki. Bioki is the unhealthy key, right? And so I think confidence really speaks to how we respond to life's challenges and to life's stresses or pressures, like um, if you do a lot of public speaking and then, public speaking maybe is that time where you can really see your confidence in action. And if you go into a place of public speaking and you like can speak really clearly and your confidence is exuded onto the audience, confidence is really catchy that way, right? It's like a spread. So one person being confident and gives other people confidence. On the other side of things, if you go up and public speak and that confidence isn't there, you're bumbling all over your words, you start mumbling, you are like sweating, everybody's going to be like, oh God, oh no, and I think that it does show that like that kind of energetic essence of confidence is with us too, right? And we can see it in the body. So if we are prone to the other side of the coin, feeling lack of confidence, negative self-worth, then it kind of starts to like show up in our body. Roll our shoulders forward, our belly might hunch forward, and so it people can see that, I think, and that really shows up in our subtle body in many ways too. So confidence is one of those funky things too that you can fake it. And sometimes it works and sometimes it really doesn't. But that's so and I think when you come down to it, it's just like seeing it as like a healthy thing. So when we can be really healthy with our sense of confidence, our self-worth, that's a wonderful thing. And if you don't have that, you have to start working with those triggers of things that that negative spiral that I've gone down, whether it be self-judgment, self-criticism, trying to gain approval from other people, So working with that inner struggle of what's happening that's kind of stealing away your confidence. I think Reiki can really work with us in that liminal space.
Yeah, it seems to me that that idea of being interconnected. So I think you both spoke to that if we really feel that interconnection with life, and we bring all the different elements in, then we have a better sense of who we are. It's when I first heard the word confidence, when I was thinking about it, I sort of thought of the word common sense, actually, which is not exactly directly related, but it was a bit like not allowing all the negative speak in. Yeah. So just really understanding, having a sense of reality about who we are. And that's a really hard thing to actually have. I think we don't, we have all these things, especially today. I pity kids growing up in, the social media world and the internet. I mean, I love the internet for all the wonderful things that we have, but, just being bombarded by all these different things all the time. And where do you find yourself in amongst all of that? Very difficult. So when we have a greater sense of who we are, then it's much more easy for us just to move from that space. And I think that's what the system of Reiki definitely offers us. I loved, Michaela, that you spoke about, when we're talking about doing stuff to others, it doesn't really come from that place at all. But if it's coming from just from this natural upwelling of finding our own balance, our own common sense, then it's going to be much easier for us to just to feel confident. As far as classes go, it reminds me of so many people who come for Reiki classes and, they say, oh, I've done a Reiki class before, but, I'm just not feeling like I really know what I should do. And I say, it's confidence, right? And how do we become confident? We become confident by experiencing, whether, it may also be failure. It's not always things that are, coming out roses, but we learn from those things. And we need, I guess it's a two-way street, isn't it? We need to be confident to take risks, and we also learn from taking those risks in life. So I watched a documentary on Arnold Schwarzenegger lately on TV. Talk about confidence, right? And no, I mean, he's an amazing person, just in that sort of anything he put his mind to, he could do. Yeah. And there was a difference between him and his brother. He and his brother were both brought up similarly, it sounds like, with a very difficult family, especially a very, very difficult father. And his brother died young, and I can't remember exactly. Oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but, it was because he had a very difficult life because of his upbringing, where Arnold Schwarzenegger you could almost say was the opposite, in that he took that difficulty and he turned it into something else, which was enormous focus and self-belief, I guess. He sort of grew that in himself. So I think it is something definitely that we can all take life in different ways, and confidence is something that we can nurture. So we can do things to make ourselves feel more confident. Maybe, definitely we were just saying about the system of Reiki. By practicing that, it's helping us to understand that, like Carrie was saying, that how we are physically and how we are mentally, that these things are interconnected, and we can pick out, these are simple things, we can pick ourselves up on it. I have another thing that I just thought of, which was Robbie Williams. There you go. Robbie Williams, I think it was Robbie Williams. Anyway, he said that his mum, I hope this is right, he said that his mum said, always entertain be entertaining when you go up there. Don't worry about anything else. Just think about being entertaining, and people will love you, right? Because the whole thing is what Carrie was saying, that if we are nervous in ourselves, we exude that, and other people pick up on it, and then that makes them nervous. And in reality, if we look at someone who is performing, and the confidence levels that they need to be able to do that, then as an audience member, what we want for that person is for them is we want to enjoy ourselves, and we want to have fun, and we want good for them. We actually don't want them to fail. And I think sometimes we don't, just in normal everyday life, when we're put on the spot, we don't realize that. And people actually want to feel good around us. Yeah. So, and we want to feel good around people. So it goes both ways. And if we are feeling underconfident, other people do pick that up. It's a very natural thing to be able to sense that those things in others. So understanding in ourselves that it's okay, and we don't, that we are all here actually for each other, I think is a really great lesson, and something that we all actually want to support each other, and everyone wants to feel good and share that confidence around.
I love that you talked about confidence as something that we can cultivate, that we can work on. Because I think a lot of times we think about confidence as something that a person either innately has or doesn't have, or, obviously it's a spectrum, but that the level of a person's confidence has, more to do with their character or kind of, how they were brought up. And less emphasis on it being a skill and a way of being that we can develop. And certainly there is a natural confidence level somewhere on the spectrum that each of us will have as a result of who we are. But it absolutely is something that we can work on. And certainly that has to do with developing our skills and knowledge around the thing that we want to be confident in. But not everything that we might have or lack confidence in is about skill or knowledge. There's confidence in our health, in our appearance, in, things that don't have to do with knowledge necessarily. But, in most realms, there's things that we can practice that help to increase our confidence. But then there's that innate sense of, again, trust in ourselves, and like a settled sense, even when we don't fully know about the thing. And that's the piece that really can be developed through spiritual practice. And working with the system of Reiki, beginning with the precepts, is a really powerful way to do that, because of course the precepts give us this description of a way of being that is certainly a confident way of being, a way of being that is settled, that is, rooted, that has a steadiness about us, a way of being that is not being buffeted by all of our feelings as they come in, but that's really settled in who we are and what our feelings are. And of course, one that has deep compassion for ourselves. And, all of those things are really necessary if we're going to live a life trusting ourselves, essentially. And working with not only the precepts, but the practices that help us to develop that sense of stability has a huge impact on our sense of trusting ourselves, and therefore our sense of confidence. I'm working with a group right now. We do a seasonal 21-day practice that I believe I've mentioned before. And this season we're working with the Furomyo mantra, and Carrie shared a bit about Furomyo in your teach back from Japan. Really useful information there. And one of the central attributes of Furomyo, his name means the immovable one. And, so one of the central deities in Shingon Buddhism, the immovable one. And, this sense, this energy that he brings, that is like the mountain, that is rooted and strong with a nice, wide, stable base, and not rigid, not, tight, right? There's a lot of movement and life and flow that occurs on a mountain. He's sitting on a stable foundation of rock, but he's also surrounded by fire, which is in constant movement and transition and dynamics. And I really feel that Furo energy is very much confidence energy. And that combination between stability and movement, really describes in a lot of ways to me what it feels like to be confident. Because when we're confident, we're not rigid, we're not fixed in how we're approaching something. We're able to adjust as things happen. We're able to, think and shift on our feet. I think that's something that often people can observe and name as confident, right? When they see a person who's able to really, kind of go with the flow and move and shift and adjust in real time. And at the same time, grounded, stable, not thrown off, right, when those changes come through. And so, we have this system of practice that gives us specific tools and points of focus that cultivate those types of feelings in ourselves so that we can move through the world trusting ourselves. And, again, as I said, there's just such a sense of freedom and relief when we can be in that space of trusting ourselves, especially which truly is all the time, when we can't predict what's going to happen, right? Or when we have a base set of skills and knowledge, but we go out into the world and anything can happen when we're going to apply those skills and knowledge. And, again, not to downplay the value of doing the work, right? Because, if we think about going into a Reiki practice, one of the things that often my students are nervous about is, things that will come up that are unexpected inside of a session. Things that will happen with a client while they're working with them, or questions they'll be asked that they won't know the answer to. And that can be a source of anxiety and a source of lack of confidence. And so, certainly doing the work over a period of time will build our skill and knowledge and experience, and therefore our confidence. But I think what I want to really emphasize, and what that I emphasize to my students, is that it's not necessarily the case that you have to step into it on a lack of confidence footing, right? It's like, let's do all that we can to step into our practice already trusting ourselves, and not have to start from ground zero, which again is a great call for regarding Reiki as a self-practice first and foremost, because we spend time in that space before stepping into the unknown space of working with other people.
Yeah, I think there's so much in there. It was really good food for thought, and just food to help us nourish that sense of confidence. I saw a meme the other day that was just really profound, I thought, and it was like, you're paying a lot of people to teach you how to trust yourself. when it's really just about trusting yourself, right? Learning how to trust yourself.
100%.
And like I said, I've struggled with confidence so much in my life, and really struggled in particular with public speaking. It's an interesting thing for me because I used to teach like 15 yoga classes a week, and just like every time I get in front of a crowd of people, just all this nervous energy come flowing all over me. I'd feel it for hours before a class began, and all of that it's always been something that I really have to work through. Like anytime I'm holding space for somebody, or there are, those triggers in my life that bring up that sense of like fear or anxiety. And some of the things that like Bronwen said had really, really did help me with it is, you know, knowing that an audience wants to be entertained is one thing, but also to know that the audience is rooting for you. And one of the biggest mindset shifts that I've ever had to make is to make that implicit assumption that people are there because they want to support me, or that they aren't thinking judgmental thoughts of me as I'm, guiding an experience, or a yoga class, or Reiki session, or a Reiki training. That people are there because they want to receive. They have a positive mindset and agenda there, right? And so it's like, to start off on that good foot, I think is really important, and to feel that. And when things kind of slide down the wrong way, then you gotta have to come back to that. in yoga, they talk about this idea of a bhav, or a feeling state. So bhav, BHAV, is a feeling state. And you can see how our feelings and our thoughts are so intertwined with one another, right? They're just this kind of cosmic soup. And it can really show up in our subtle body too. So I used to guide a journey through the chakras in my yoga classes, particularly at the beginning of the year. And I would start off the year, moving through the chakras. And I found, after I'd done it a few times, that I always felt really good about the first three chakras. That they were easy, like, for whatever reason, and they really translated with my students. And then once I started getting into the heart chakra, there was this kind of emotional vulnerability that I didn't have a whole lot of skill holding space for that. I wasn't holding space enough for myself, but I also wasn't holding space for the room, right? And so as I started climbing up through the chakras, I realized I was getting more and more anxious, and that there was this kind of emotional liability in me that I wasn't addressing, and I didn't really have skills at that time to address it. And it all culminated when I taught this throat chakra class, and I'm teaching about the throat chakra, and my throat was like closed down, clamped down. And it was just this total paradox where here I am, like, trying to help and support other people's throat chakra, but it was all of this self-judgment and self-criticism that had built up, and this anxiety about public speaking. It was written in my subtle body, and when I'm trying to support other people in that process, I realize, like, it absolutely has to start from within. So you just can't, I mean, sometimes you can fake it. You can, brush it under the rug or whatever. But in that experience, I couldn't. And so it took that kind of a really challenging class, a class that I struggled really bad with, to recognize, oh, there's a problem here, right? And I needed to adjust it, and I needed to work on my throat, and I needed to work on expressing myself, and creating and cultivating that clear, conscious communication with my students, with my clients, and not getting into my head about it. And it was a real life lesson for me, and I look back at that, and I can say that mistake, was just one class that happened, I don't know, 5-7 years ago, but it taught me so much, so much. And so we can learn from our mistakes if we choose to, right? We can totally learn from it. And another thing I can say about just the struggles I've had in this world is my mindset and my thoughts. And so when I notice my thoughts just running down a negative spiral, I've had to learn that if all I'm doing and all I'm thinking about is self-criticism and self-judgment, then I'm not also holding space for whoever's receiving whatever I have to give. I'm not holding space for them to have a positive experience. And I'm always kind of like rebounding and sensing things in the room, whatever. And I'm not staying steady in my own body and my own experience, like you were speaking to Michaela. So, it can be a whole body experience, really holding space, and a journey, right, towards greater confidence. But I think I've learned also that I really value repetition and, experience over time. Like, I don't know, I've taught yoga classes at this point. So I can lean into that experience anytime I feel an anxiety rising up in me. I can work with all of the tools I have at my disposal. I can schedule and make time for myself to be in my own energy body before I lead an experience, just so that I definitely have that grounding and centeredness in my being. So all of those things really matter in terms of confidence. And those are things that I've worked through in my life and my journey.
Wow. Yeah, I think, I was saying common sense before, but what you just brought up was probably another word for that, which is, being honest, isn't it? And being honest in yourself. But it's not easy to be honest in ourselves and find that what that truth is for us. And it's good when those things that happen that aren't really great, but they bring us back into that honesty space, don't they? And that, I think
Yeah,
that's
and I think that's also really, sorry to bounce off that, but honesty and vulnerability and authenticity is also what people want. People need that
right.
to really break down their own barriers,
Yeah, we
because
connect to that, don't we? And when we are going down the spiral thing of negative thoughts, it's not honest, actually, which we don't actually see. For some reason, we seem to think that that's going to be the more honest path, that the negative shit, because it's more, I don't know, because it doesn't build us up. And sometimes I guess we feel that maybe, I don't know, maybe we feel like if building ourselves up, and maybe it's those words because they sound fake, right? Because they don't sound like a real thing. If you're building something up, doesn't sound honest, I guess. Yeah. So because if I think of it in that way, in some terms, I'm going to say the opposite now, but it's like a stripping down, isn't it? Because that's when we get to see ourselves and see the honesty inside of ourselves. So yeah, I do think that we have that honesty there inside of us and we can touch it. But that a lot of the negative shit gets in the way. And possibly the fantastic, if you're a fantasist or something like that, that can possibly get in the way too. I know that the idea that we should be unlimited in our beliefs about ourselves, and but on the other hand, there's something about that that we should be open, I think, is probably more the point, rather than be trying to make ourselves be something that we're not.
Yeah, and you're speaking to kind of a spectrum of dishonesty, right? Where, like, on the one hand, we live in a culture that really leans into like criticism and assessment. And, we're really used to a dynamic where we're getting assessed and probably criticized and told what we haven't done well, from school to, job assessments to, in relationships, like there's this dynamic there. And that can easily tip from, constructive, valuable feedback to it's always negative, and then we take that on and do that to ourselves, versus the opposite end of the spectrum where we kind of are used to like, oh, we can do no wrong, and we take that overly positive perspective. Either way, there's an inability to really give ourselves an honest self-assessment about like where we are. And both of those extremes and the anxieties that they can produce give us this sense of our self-worth is attached to our output, right? That like how we show up and what we do and the job that we do and how well we do or do not, or what we do or don't know, is what determines our worth, our actual value as a person, versus something that's inherently valuable about each of us. And again, the system of Reiki really gives us a pathway to remember our inherent value and self-worth that has absolutely nothing to do with how well we can do anything. And Carrie, I loved the way that what you shared, and I appreciate, how vulnerable you're sharing, because it's really, first of all, beautiful and instructive for us. The way that you talked about the relationships with other people and like public speaking or teaching a class, or, many of the things that we might struggle in confidence has to do with other people, even if it's cooking a meal for somebody, right? If we're not feeling confidence in our ability to do that, a lot of that is that fear of negative assessment from the other people. And so it really brings to light that, we are social communal beings, we're group animals. And the way that we interact with each other around the sharing of something, some part of ourself, whether we're giving a lecture or teaching a class or demonstrating something or cooking something or making a piece of artwork or whatever it is that we're contributing, we want to contribute. It's part of who we are. We want to contribute into the collective because it's part of our survival. It's part of how we're designed. And And so there's naturally an anxiety around how that contribution will be received. And so we can remember that when we're on the other side, right? When we are the audience or the students or the receiver of the meal or the person at the art show looking at the art, what is our role in uplifting that person who's bringing that offering to us? Because we don't know what's going on in their head, right? Sometimes we can see, like your students probably could hear the tightening in your throat, right? There was probably some way in which they were aware of that. Sometimes we are, sometimes we aren't. But I think it could be helpful for us to remember that any time that we're on the side of receiving some offering from somebody, it's a shared experience. We have a role in that. And the degree to which we can offer encouragement and an affirmation and support, especially if they're visibly nervous or tripping over their words somehow, or they did something wrong, or they, like when there's something that's off about it, we have the ability to step in and provide a sense of uplift and a sense of bringing calm and ease to that person in the midst of whatever stumble that they're in. It's bringing to mind a situation my best friend has just been in. Her daughter has been raising goats. My friend's a farmer, and her daughter's been raising goats since she was a kid, and has a pretty, well-established breeding program for a 20-year-old person, right? She's been doing this for like 4 or 5 years. And it really matters to her. She really wants to, move in the direction of animal husbandry and possibly veterinary medicine. And, it's her passion. It's what she's following. So she takes her goats to goat shows, and they do the whole, thing. And she has, put a lot of time and money into building a herd of goats that have good pedigree. And in this world, you have to have detailed documentation about the breeding of your animals and where they came from and who their parents are and their medical histories and so on. And that's like your essential information. You cannot show your goats if you don't have this information. And they went to a show this weekend and they lost the binder with all of this information. She has a show next weekend. She cannot show her goats if they did not retrieve this binder. And they called the venue, which is 3 hours away from where we live. And they said, can somebody look, can somebody like call around, ask around, see, if we can find this information that we left. And what they got back was mountains of criticism, shaming even. How could you have done this? You're not ready for the big leagues. How could you have possibly left? Do you understand the consequences? Somebody could take those documents and claim your animals, and legally they could have them. And just this heaps of shame that just got piled on this 20-year-old person who's doing her best. And it really just like sat heavy on my heart. Like, this is a community of people making an offering to the world in the realm of, food animals and farming. And they have, really enthusiastic, talented young person, doing her best and making a mistake. And that's a collaboration. Like, this is a community. And the way that this was being approached was to tear her down. Now, what does that do to her confidence, right? How does that impact how she shows up to the next show? And so it's just really heavy on my heart that we all have a role in each other's sense of trust and well-being and stability in our lives and in what we do. Because when it comes down to it, it's about what we're contributing to community. The things that we tend to feel the most shaky about. I mean, this isn't universally true. We can certainly have lack of confidence around things that are private. But oftentimes it's about the places that we're making a contribution into the community. And those of us who are receiving that contribution or participating in some way, we have a responsibility to hold some of that trust with that person who's making the offering. And I just wanted to kind of talk about that other side of it, because it just really, I just wonder, like, when we're in that moment when our throat is closing and we're feeling so stressed about what we're doing, and maybe we were convinced that we're totally screwing it up in that moment, the difference it can make if somebody, smiles at us or says, hey, you're doing great, or, keep going, or hey, say that again, that was really beautiful, whatever that is, whatever that little piece is.
Sorry, there's nothing to repeat.
And now Siri interrupts you, and now all of a sudden you feel like you've been talking too long, and you're like, your confidence plummets, and you feel like Siri is criticizing you, and it's just, it all goes to hell, except you've got a practice that can help you to feel centered and grounded and confident.
But you know, it goes both ways. I mean, yes, that would be ideal, Michaela, and it's not always ideal. I mean, it doesn't always work that way, and yeah, shitty things happen in life and people say shitty things to do. So we do need to build our resilience as a part of our skill set, and that's what I was sort of saying before about, you know, we can go either way, can't we? You know, we can let it just destroy us, or we can let it, or we can look at the honesty of that too and say, what is up with those people? You know, it is their issue in reality, yeah, not my issue, and move on from that. So I mean, for her, your friend's daughter, I was just thinking about, you know, I think it's a lesson, not a great one, not a great one about society, I guess, but it is something that hopefully she takes it as a way to grow from, rather than to allow her to fall down from. And also those sorts of things, it teaches you not to be like that.
Right. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So she won't do that to someone, hopefully. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's so important. Our mindset is, I mean, it's so intertwined with all that I'm saying and we've talked about, but I know for myself, like, I think that there's a constant, you know, I can make a choice. Like after I either teach a yoga class, or after we film a podcast, or after a Reiki session, whatever it is, you know, we can immediately self-assess ourselves and give ourselves judgment about how it went or how it didn't go. But rarely do we sit inside of what was beautiful about it, what was positive, what was uplifting. And I think that also speaks to an episode we did way back on non-duality, and how, you know, as a different analogy, when we're looking at healing, you know, if we think of Reiki as a healing practice, and our whole mindset is about, every time I do Reiki, I'm just going to think about that shitty stuff that's come up and things that have happened to me, and just, you know, all of the awful things that I'm feeling in any moment. Like if that's the essence of our practice, we will only get so far, because ultimately Reiki is about uncovering our light. And so we have to be more comfortable sitting inside that light, sitting inside of our confidence, allowing ourselves the freedom to be confident, and to ground ourselves really in that sense of positive self-esteem and self-worth, no matter how we show up and how we contribute in life. It's absolutely essential. And so if we're always stuck on the negative stuff, we're just going to keep creating more negative stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is research that the negative, if we have more negative thoughts, we have more physical things going wrong in our body. I mean, it just is, that is it. And that says something in itself. But you know, what you're saying is so true, Carrie. It's about shining our light, and it's you know, that comes from a space of self-compassion, comes from a space of compassion for others, and that everything works like this, and to feel that and be in that. And you know, we need to celebrate ourselves, and we need to celebrate each other, I think. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, I think we'll finish with that. Thank you so much. And thank you. I celebrate you two very much. And I also celebrate myself. I celebrate this podcast. And I celebrate all you people who so lovely to come and listen and join in with us and have some fun and some thoughts about things. And let's enjoy what we have together and really let that build us up together rather than to build us down. And can you build down? Let's build up and balance this world out into a lovely open boundless space of love and compassion. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. Make sure you like us, follow us, do all those lovely things, and share us. I'm sure someone could find value in being uplifted today as well. Yeah. So thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Love you.